Thank you, Roscoe, for that beautiful reading. Isn't that good? You think someone would be intimidated by having the best sermon of our day read before their sermon. And thank you, Michael, for being here with us today. We need someone who speaks the Queen's English to be here. So we are confronted today with the notions of love and abide. In our text, Jesus uses these two words over and over again. Did you notice that juxtaposition? In this scripture, abiding is a way of saying, make your home with. Make your home with. And Jesus, through his love, grace, and mercy, showed us how to abide with God. And that is through our loving acts of hospitality and goodness. You see, abiding is an active word. We make our home with Jesus, and we do it purposely as a community. We actively invite others into that home with us. The language we use in this home, can you guess, is the language of love. I remember having a roommate several years ago. And we had this shocking encounter. He was a grad school student at Caltech, which is why I love to watch the TV show Big Bang Theory. It's a little bit of my life. I'm like, Kaylee Cuoco, so cute. I came home, and he said this thing to me. He said, "You make me feel unwelcome in our apartment." And I thought, oh my goodness, me? I was a cheerleader in high school. How can I make anyone feel less than enthusiastically a part of anything? But I know he was going through some difficult stuff. He was home a lot. He played a lot of World of Warcraft. He was home a lot, and I know that he was struggling a bit. And so I may have been bugged. I may have maybe made him feel less than welcome, and it got me thinking about what it means to have a home and actually invite people into that place. Has anyone traveled? I know we have a lot of travelers, so I ask that question rhetorically. We have many people that love to travel. If you go to a different country or a different culture, you know the thing that you need is, information, right? You need guidance. You need to know social cues. You need to know the language, maybe how to say, "Where is the bathroom?" Or call the police. I don't know your life. I don't know your life when you travel. I don't know your life. We rely on other people's experiences and wisdom. We rely on guides. We relied on guidebooks. I love buying travel books. Anyone love to buy travel books before you travel? I'm a huge Rick Steves fan, right? Europe through the back door. And you buy those so that you get a picture and an image before you come to a place, so that you can get the most out of that place. Because castles and cathedrals and mansions and museums, they are just places with pretty stuff, without the story, the heart, the feet, the life behind them. And when you find out about that story, it opens your eyes to a new world, a new experience. It either invites you into that place or keeps you at a cold distance. Hospitality, I believe, is holy. And I believe that is what Jesus is talking about when he says abide and love. And he puts those two things together. We are supposed to abide and find our home in God's love, but we don't stop there. We invite people into that love. We are tour guides, if you will. Tour guides of the new realm of love that Jesus showed us was possible when he was on earth. And so I have another confession to make about traveling. I was yelled at York Cathedral. It's true, by a priest. It's true. Should I leave now? Am I fired? So if anyone who's been to the city of York in northern England, you know I lived in England for a year. I did, which is why I'm so comfortable sitting next to you. It's just lovely. We went to, it's actually called York Minster, but it's the cathedral that's in the city of York in the northern part of England. And we visited, I was with a group of us. There was 2 Canadians, there's always Canadians. a few of us were American, and one of our friends was an Irish lass, I like to call her. And so we actually toured around the city, and we decided at the end we would go to York Minster and we would take a tour, because I am the sort of clergy nerd that loves taking tours of like holy sites. Anyone with me? Like cathedrals, churches, you want to hear all about it. So I was so excited. So we were told to wait over in this area because the docent was going to come and give us the tour. So it was me, our group, and it was 2 women from England, from the UK. It was 2 families, one was German, one was Spanish, and then a couple from Australia, because if you travel, there's always a couple from Australia. Always. I don't know why. So we were all talking and chatting, as you do. You know, I'm so shy, I didn't meet anyone that day. And this sort of hobbit, hunched-looking gentleman walked over to us and spoke very softly in an almost inaudible way to us. We didn't understand what he said, and we were all sitting there going like, what? And he strode away purposely. He strode all the way over to the other side of the cathedral. We watched him go, and then he turned around very dramatically and began speaking to no one. And what we realized very quickly was that he was our tour guide. And probably what he had said, which we didn't understand, was, "Come follow me." And so we sat there and we're like, oh, ha, ha, you know, funny. And we walked over casually over to him. And by the time we got over there, he was pissed. He was so angry at us. He, rather than thinking we didn't hear him, had assumed that a group of about 12 strangers from different countries had spent the first 3 minutes of their meeting conspiring to humiliate the tour guide. So he yelled at us, I don't know what he said, and stormed off. And we were like, oh my gosh, we were shocked. And so, you know, we kind of figured out what was going on. We were kind of, you know, and the family with kids, I think, was like, honey, let's go. Like, they just left. And so there's a group of us standing here, and then the priest came over, and he continued yelling at us. I can't believe how disrespectful. And of course, when he's yelling at us, he's yelling at me, right? Because I'm the loud one standing there. And I'm just sitting there going like, I'm in a Bible school. I didn't do anything. Like, I don't know. And these 2 British women, and over the years, as I have remembered them, they've started to look more and more like the Queen of England and sound more and more like Mrs. Doubtfire. So they came over and stood in our way, in the priest, and they said, how dare you? These ladies are did you go to Bible school? I hope you went to Bible school. Doesn't sound like you went to Bible. And they just defended us. They were fierce, and they were fabulous, and it didn't matter at all because we never got a tour of York Cathedral. So that's my experience. So when I look back at York Minster Cathedral, I think, right? I went on the website this week. We're so welcoming. I'm like, yeah, super welcoming. I felt very welcome. Thank you. And then later, on another trip, I was in Prague, and I was not yelled at Prague. But one of my closest friends, we did a backpacking tour through Europe before the invention of the cell phone, when you had to actually look up and talk to people and use maps and like paper and stuff. And so when we got to Prague, we knew it was kind of not on our tour list of things, and we decided kind of at the last minute to go to Prague on a train. And so we didn't know much about Prague. We didn't have a book about Prague. And so we decided we were going to take a tour there. We would spend a little money and get like a tour there so that we knew what was going on in Prague. And so we paid for a tour, we went to the city, we get into this fancy kind of tour bus, and it is just her and I in this tour bus, which is fine. So it was like almost having a private tour, I thought. And so the lady who gave the tour, we'll call her Olga, and the gentleman who drove the bus were there, and we sat basically right up front. So I was sitting here, my friend is sitting here, and she's literally like right here. And when she turned to give her first spiel about Prague, she used the microphone in the bus. David, she used the microphone in the bus and spoke really loudly, and we were just like, oh my goodness, like we're right here, like it's just us. Like I don't know why you need the microphone. And we kept trying to ask her questions, because that'll also be a personal tour. And she's like, save the questions for later. And of course, there never was later. And then she did the whole entire time. So we'd stop and we'd go to like a museum. And it would be, again, just the 2 of us and this lady, and I'm not gonna say it, I will, she wasn't wearing a bra. She was, gesturing wildly. She would, gracious do this. She used that flag thing. Follow me. And we're just 2 of us. And at one point I looked around and I thought, can she see other people? Because I don't see anyone but us. So while we got a wonderful tour of Prague, it wasn't very personable, right? It wasn't very tailored to our needs. I don't necessarily look at Prague as a place I'd call home. Okay. And then a few years ago, I was in Chicago, probably one of my favorite cities, and we were at the Rockefeller Memorial Chapel, which is on the University of Chicago's campus. Has anyone ever been to the University of Chicago? It sort of looks like Hogwarts, doesn't it? It's amazing university. I had two friends that were there. They were both Jewish clergy, and so of course we went to the cathedral, we went to the chapel, we went to the religious place, and we were walking around and kind of looking at it. It was really beautiful. And this woman came by and she said, "Are you here for the tour?" And we looked at each other and said, "Yes." We didn't know there was a tour. And so we followed this woman up the stairs. And I think maybe in hindsight, maybe I wouldn't have done that knowing what we know now about the tour. But it turns out it was a tour of the Carillon Room and a tour of the tower, the large tower with the bells on it, if you've ever been there. So for those of you who don't know what a carillon is, I probably won't explain this well. It's sort of a cross between like a piano and an organ, but instead of pipes or strings, it uses the bells of the cathedral. And so you play it and the bells play. And I didn't even know this was a thing. I don't know where I've been living, but I had no idea this was a thing. So we go up, and if you look on the tour guide site, it says, "Don't do this tour if you're claustrophobic." It's bad. So we walked up the stairs, and as you go up, it was 271 claustrophobic steps. You saw it. I saw someone do this. It just gets, by the end, it was like, I should go on a diet. I was like, oh my gosh. And so we get to the very top, and of course, I'm also, can you guess, afraid of heights. I'm actually not afraid of heights. I'm more afraid of falling to my death, and I think that's a rational fear. It's a rational fear. So we get to the top. I'm afraid of heights, I'm claustrophobic, and we walk up, and the first thing she says is, "Oh, good, there's not very many spiders." Spiders? And there were only a few dead birds. So we stood there, and I was, white-knuckling my friend, because I basically said, if I go off this tower, you are going with me. I took a few breaths. I tried not to panic or weep or cry. And then when I let myself go a little bit, I realized we had this amazing view of the city. You could see 360 degrees around Chicago. You could see the downtown from there. It was a clear and beautiful day. And one of my favorite architects is Frank Lloyd Wright, and there's a lot of his architecture around Chicago. And so from this vantage point, it's really the only place you can see the Roby House, which is right down there on the University of Chicago campus, and next to it is a newer building that the university built, and it mimics that architecture. And you actually can only see it from that vantage point. And so when I looked out and I saw, again, not getting too close to the edge, it was the most amazing view. And then we walked down to the 240th steps. We went all the way up 271 down to 240, and there was a room where the Carillon was, and we got to finally sit in chairs. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad to sit in a chair. This has been so much standing and walking. And then she explained to us that the 12 chairs that were there were brought up individually by her, 240 flights of stairs, while she was pregnant. So I stopped complaining. Boop, not going to complain anymore. And so she was charming and lovely. She was a grad student, it turned out. She was a grad student in music, obviously. She loved this Carillon. She told us all about it, about the history. She let us take questions. We got to know each other. There's about 12 of us on the tour. We got to know each other. We write. No, we don't write anymore. Yeah, we're not friends. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. She took, she played the Carillon. She did it about noon as we got done with the tour. Where she plays it, she took requests. We got to play some fun things. I got to play it a little bit myself. Are you jealous? Okay. It was so wonderful. It was so wonderful. I bet that I could give you a tour of this tower and this Carillon with some Xanax. But it was a wonderful, wonderful tour. And it made me think, as I think back through my life of traveling and tours, that how you are introduced to something, how you are either welcomed in or pushed out, has a lasting impact on how you think and interact with it. Whether it's an idea or a person or a place or a church or a religion, how you are entered into it has a great impact on how you feel about it, how you think about it. And Jesus says that the way we introduce people to our faith, to this abiding sense of who we are in God, is through love, sweet love. Not tasteless love, not bitter love, not hateful love, not judgment, not through barriers. But the way that we enter people into our lives of faith is through the language of love. And love, by the way, has been co-opted by our culture and our world, because it's not just a sappy emotion. What we talk about today is love that is sacrificial and rooted in God, rooted in God's love. And today the song that was sung so beautifully, thank you, Jen. If you were here for the beginning, now I know who wasn't here on time. At the beginning, we had the title of the sermon is What the World Needs Now is Love, Sweet Love. And this song that was sung today, it isn't about sentimentality. It was written, as you know, during the mid-'60s when the nation was steeped in a divisive and dirty debate about the Vietnam War and was entrenching itself along racial lines during the civil rights movement. And yet we sing about love, sweet love. This is the decade where Richard Nixon will become president. This was the decade JFK was assassinated, MLK Jr. was assassinated. This is the decade of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Bay of Pigs, the construction of the Berlin Wall. It was a turbulent, violent, vitriolic, polarizing decade. And yet, the song is about love, sweet love. Because this is also the decade where the Peace Corps was created. James Meredith, the first black student, enrolls at the University of Mississippi. Hold on. The Beatles come on the scene. BBC broadcasts its first episode of Doctor Who. That was just for me. No one else really cares. Sidney Poitier is the first black actor to win the Best Academy Award. The first Ford Mustang is sold. That's for Neil. Watch it online. The first episode of Star Trek airs. Woodstock happens. We land on the moon. Sesame Street debuts. Thurgood Marshall is appointed as the first black Supreme Court justice in the U.S. And the first episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood airs on February... What? Aww. Airs on February 19th, 1968. Yes, Fred Rogers, an ordained Protestant Christian minister, becomes in that decade the welcoming, inclusive, important, humorous host we didn't know we needed, but we are so glad we had. His gift of gentle hospitality is one that we should emulate to this day. His message was a simple one. What the world needs now is love, sweet love. And he went on to express that message encased in the reality that you and I are all special. All of God's children are special and included and loved. Mr. Rogers said in a commencement college address in 2001, when we look for what's best in the person we happen to be with at the moment, we are doing what God does. So in appreciating our neighbor, we're participating in something truly sacred. Hospitality, the welcome of abiding, the welcome of love, in other words, is our act of being sacred in this world. Hospitality is sacred. Inviting people into your home, into your life, taking off your shoes, your coat, your tie, putting on your sweater, being present just for a little while. And in our quote today from Bishop, thank you, Roscoe, for reading it, we are reminded that a few weeks ago, two people made a home together. I know we think about the wedding and the pageantry. It was Harry and Meghan, their Duke and Duchess of, I don't know, something, doesn't matter, okay. They invited us along for their journey, their royal journey. While her guest list was impressive and her dress was beautiful, it wasn't about the dress and it wasn't about the guests. It was about them. It was about love, sweet love. And astonishingly, as no other royal wedding has ever been about in my lifetime, it was about the gospel of Jesus and how that is how we display love. The gospel, in fact, is our true home. So the scripture, again, talks about abiding in God. God is our true vine, our true center, our true origin, our creator, our liberator, the one who holds us together and helps us grow and flourish. We are known by God's love, and we love as a means to make God known. And so, We lay down our lives for one another. We give selflessly. We treat our enemies as our friends. We treat our friends as our family. And so, of course, later in my journey, after he'd moved away, my roommate, we actually reconciled. He lives in Arizona now. He came back and we had some talks and we said sorry. I realized that I was probably at the end of our roommate situation, not in a good place. I was looking for a job out of seminary, not too happy with it. Wasn't sure what church I was going to be at. Thank you, United Church of Christ. And he had come out to his very right-wing family. And he was struggling with a lot of things too that I didn't know. And so we reconciled. And in fact, I officiated his wedding just a few years ago. On the beach in Santa Monica. In fact, his was the first same-sex wedding I ever did. Maybe without him, I wouldn't be here, right? Because even delayed hospitality is sacred, right? And so as we talk of reclaiming Christianity, I want to challenge us all that we have the power to reclaim love as well. Because if we cannot love our neighbor, even people who are different than us, and we can't be as hospitable as Mr. Rogers is, then what does our Christianity mean for the world at all? We display it through love. It's this enemy thinking that is the forefront of the Pulse nightclub shooting remembrance today. The nightclub, a place of beauty and inclusion, a sort of sacred space in and of itself, was shattered inexplicably, horrifically, forever. But in the aftermath, if you heard the poem we read as sacred text, we still remain open to the redemptive power of love. Because if they don't get to decide whether we are worthy of love, those people who care about baking cakes for people or where churches should be, or if you can go into a hardware store, if they don't get to decide that we are worthy of love, then the hard truth is we don't get to decide if they are worthy of love. Because you know who's decided already all of our worth? God has. God has decided that it's about love. It's about real love. It's about sacrificial love. It's about merciful love. It's about kind love. It's about welcoming love. It's about love, sweet love. And so part of reclaiming Jesus is reclaiming this hospitality and this welcome to all. So you can be like the guide of York Cathedral, full of fear and judgment, gatekeeper of who is worthy to understand this holy place, taking things too personally and forgetting the reason he's there at all. Or you can be like our tour guide in Prague, competent and thorough, but entirely unaware of her audience, not asking questions, but only having all the answers. Ooh. Or you can be like the Carillon grad student who has no idea she's the topic of a sermon today, who loved to share her music so passionately that she would carry 12 chairs up 240 stairs while she was pregnant, who invited strangers into her tour regardless if they signed up for it or not, listened and interacted with passion and conviction, not knowing everything, but knowing that this journey that she was taking us through was worth it. And so we were immeasurably valuable to her. She wouldn't let anyone take that tour or those steps alone. So today, my challenge is that we claim our place of love. As we abide in God's love, we claim that love for ourselves. And then we invite others along for this journey. And the invitation is love. And the destination is love. And the reality is love. Love, sweet love. It's what the world needs now. Amen.
Yes.